Hello and welcome to my channel TFF Teacher from Finland. My name is Jouni Vilkka and I am a teacher from Finland. Are there such things as moral facts? Can we be right or wrong about morals? If you think I am a good person, for example, can your assessment be either correct or incorrect? Or is it more like a matter of taste or preference? Does your assessment depend on your cultural background or some other non-ethical issue like your relationship with me? The idea that morals could be relative instead of absolute and universal is the meta-ethical view called relativism. It is often considered a very problematic stance, perhaps even a failure of philosophical ethics. In this video, which is part of my series on philosophical ethics, I will talk about different forms of relativism as well as criticisms of relativism. But before I go deeper into the subject, perhaps you should consider clicking the thumbs up button and even subscribing to my channel. The term realism can be used in different contexts to refer to the opinion that something is real, actually existing. In the context of ethics, realism then refers to the opinion that moral values and, at least in some cases, even moral rules are real in some sense. It can be considered a metaphysical, or more accurately, ontological view, because it is a claim about what reality is actually like, what sorts of things exist. It does not necessarily follow that we can know those things. It can thus be distinguished from the epistemological view known as cognitivism, which claims that we can know not only that such values exist, but also what those values are, or which moral rules are the right ones to follow. Except for John Mackey's error theory, according to which we only know that all moral statements are erroneous, false. Opposed to realism and cognitivism are views known as irrealism or anti-realism, as well as non-cognitivism. And of course nihilism, according to which there are no moral truths and moral practice makes no sense. That is different from the other negative views because anti-realism and non-cognitivism usually still consider moral language to be meaningful and even important. Realism is often contrasted with relativism. The latter denies the existence of objective or absolute values and morals, claiming that they are not actually independent of other things or conditions. Instead, morals are always relative to something else. There are several different types of relativism, making somewhat different claims. Descriptive relativism only states the obvious, that there are in fact differing and contradictory norms. Meta-ethical relativism states that ethics has no objective foundation, and normative relativism argues that all norms are equal as there is no universal standard to appeal to. One form of relativism is subjectivism, and in fact it is common to see objectivism and subjectivism compared or juxtaposed. Subjectivism is the most extreme form of relativism because it claims that each subject, meaning person, can have their own morals and that there is no real or objective basis for morals. Types of emotivism are typical examples of subjectivism. One's moral claims are merely expressions of emotions and attitudes. According to Hume, for example, morality requires motivation, which reason cannot provide. Emotions can and do. We experience more or less strong emotions as reactions to the justice and injustice we observe or even just imagine, and these experiences guide our moral thinking. But according to the subjectivists, this means everyone can have different moral opinions, and none of them is better or more correct than the next. While subjectivism could lead one to adopt a tolerance toward other people's moral views, that, or any sort of morality, does not actually follow from the metaethical theory. It can just as well lead the subjectivist to demand that others accept their views. Without an objective basis for morals, rules can become a matter of might makes right. The strong command the rest, believing themselves to be within their rights in doing so. Note that this is not nihilism, the denial of the existence of values, because even the mighty in this scenario actually do care about their own values and norms. They just don't believe there is an objective justification for them. For them, it is all about what they approve or disapprove of. To them, the statement, stealing is wrong, only means I don't accept stealing, but they can be hell-bent on enforcing their view on others. One implication of subjectivism is that no moral view can ever be wrong. No one can ever be mistaken about moral matters. When two people disagree about whether euthanasia is moral or not, they are merely stating their attitudes toward euthanasia. The problem is that both of them want the other to change their opinion, but doing so by rational means, such as philosophical discussion, is difficult if there can be, even in principle, nothing but subjective emotions to justify the opinion. Opinions can of course change as the result of a person properly thinking through the facts of the matter and exercising empathy. But this is not rational evaluation of arguments. The most common type of relativism, among the general population at least, is most likely cultural relativism, which has been summed up in the saying, "When in Rome, do as the Romans do." That is, morals depend on culture, and one should act according to the prevailing norms when visiting places with different cultures. It can be understood in merely the prudent sense that it is better to do so, not necessarily that what is morally right or wrong actually depends on the culture. For example, diplomats have to accept that while stationed in a foreign country, they must not confront their hosts, even if they see things they do not personally agree with. The same attitude is recommended for tourists, and it could be a fairly benign piece of advice. Unfortunately, it can turn into discrimination and bigotry when applied to immigrants in one's own country. People perceived as foreigners can be demanded to act according to the norms and manners of the prevailing culture, to assimilate to that culture, and to discard their own. The probable reason why cultural relativism is so popular is because it is often seen as the opposite of bigotry, racism, colonialistic attitudes, and cultural imperialism. In the typical form, it seems open-minded and tolerant. To each their own sounds nice. But of course, it becomes painfully obvious in the case of any cultural clash that such a view is simply inadequate. It is clear that a person's cultural background cannot be used to justify an act in a foreign country where the act is illegal. But then, why would the same act be acceptable in one's own country, just because it happens to be generally accepted there? Where does the culture get the justification for its morals? If it has no fundamental justification, then neither has a member of that culture trying to appeal to the culture as the justification. Also, cultural relativism can be an obstacle to change and thus advancement in that culture. Things can only improve if change occurs. Cultural relativism that opposes change becomes just another harmful form of conservatism. It can also be argued that the main justification for cultural relativism, the obvious fact that different cultures have different moral views that conflict with those of other cultures, could be caused by something other than moral opinions of fundamental nature. Moral views can be based on religious beliefs, for example, which can be false. Since they contradict each other, they certainly cannot all be true. Moral views about diet can be based on ideas of purity that were once reasonable because of the level of hygiene and prevalence of diseases affecting potential food sources. Moral opinions about the acceptable number of spouses, monogamy, polygamy, may have been the result of the ratio of men to women in a given culture. As the origin of morals is revealed, and as the conditions of the culture change, it is possible that the moral views can also change. This could then mean that the truly correct moral views simply have not yet, at present, been discovered, not that they do not exist at all. Ethical relativism may be prudent most of the time, but it doesn't seem philosophically satisfactory, for the same reason why epistemic relativism fails. It seems to be simply an impossible view, because it is self-contradicting. All contradictory views cannot be equally true. If A believes that all moral claims are true, and B believes that only his moral claims are true, then A would be claiming that all moral claims are true and only B's moral claims are true at the same time. But that is a logical contradiction, and usually philosophers agree that such contradictions cannot be accepted. Ethical relativism is also impossible in practice, even if you try to apply a set of morals only to those who accept them. This would mean that nihilists would be allowed to do as they please. Also, conflicts among people who do not share morals could not be resolved. Well, it may be, of course, that they actually cannot be resolved in practice, so there's that. Yet, there remain the questions about the reality and knowability of moral values and norms. Relativism can be seen as opposing absolutism or universalism, the idea that there are absolute universal morals that apply to everyone at all times equally. A non-cognitivist can, reasonably, point out that it doesn't seem like we know or even can know what the moral facts are, even if they do exist. It could be that this is simply the unsatisfactory situation we find ourselves in, and we just have to accept that we don't really know and might never know those facts, while still insisting on trying to find out, trying to improve our understanding of morals. This could be a form of conventional relativism, where the morals would be understood to be relative to the conventions agreed upon, so not objective, absolute, or even universal, although the aim could be to get everyone to accept the conventions and so to make them universal in practice. To give morals based on such conventions the required motivating force, they could be enforced through global institutions. Such an external motivation could become internalized over time. A realist could claim that this kind of conventionalism would only be possible if, through assessment of arguments, rational people's moral opinions would converge upon the truth. If it is impossible, at least in some cases, to solve moral dilemmas rationally, it could also be because of pluralism. The idea is that there may be conflicts between real values that are worth promoting, such that there is no rational way of deciding which of them is more valuable. In such cases, different people, or even the same individual, could simultaneously pursue conflicting values with no rational resolution in sight. This is not a form of relativism, but it could explain the origins of relativism. As a metaethical view, pluralism is supposed to reduce hostilities between disagreeing parties who, in accepting pluralism, would accept the others as equally rational and good-intentioned as themselves, instead of considering them to be evil or at least ignorant or stupid. As usual, I won't try to present the ultimate true answer to the question about relativism, so I'd better end this video here. If you have been watching this long, I want to thank you for your time, and I hope you'll watch my next video as well. See you then, and bye for now. If you wish to support my channel, please click thumbs up, subscribe, and share my videos. Any comments on the videos would also be welcome.